We have a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check. Here it is. And hitting an alarming 40-year high in June, the Federal Reserve's preferred benchmark for consumer inflation is once again flashing a warning sign about the persistence of high prices. The Bureau of Economic Analysis said that the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index for August rose 6.2% from a year ago, following a revised July reading of 6.5%. The core inflation measure excludes the categories of food and energy. It's one of the most number one watched closely by Fed policymakers. The latest inflation data puts more pressure on Jerome Powell, who has vowed to make taming inflation the central bank's overarching focus. The Fed has been battling to get a runaway inflation under control for months by raising its benchmark interest rate, initiating the most aggressive tightening cycle in 4 decades, with a total of 5 increases so far this year, including 3 back-to-back hikes. Over 3/4 of a percentage point each single quarter. And to date, economists say that the minimal extent to which headline inflation has moderated is almost entirely a function of lower energy costs. This is reflected in the stubborn persistence of high core inflation, which backs out energy as well as food prices. According to CNN, it's actually bad news for the Fed. It's a primary policy tool. Raising interest rates and making it more expensive to borrow money in order to cool demand has had no effect on the supply shocks that have characterized the current inflation situation. So, something definitely needs to be done about this, and President Biden should send us stimulus checks before it gets too late. New stimulus relief money is going to be starting it. Congress is finally working on getting more financial assistance out to you right now. Especially if you're on Social Security or SSI or SSDI, you'll get the stimulus checks pretty soon. New Jersey lawmakers are moving to correct an error that would have delayed the implementation of a state-level child tax credit, everybody. Yes, a state-level child tax. Early this year, the state legislature passed, and New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy signed into law a bill that is currently offering New Jersey residents a per-child refundable income tax credit of up to $500. As a result of a drafting error, the version of the bill signed into law will only become effective in the next year, leaving the credit unpaid for 2022. In the official statement, officials have said the bill was always meant to provide immediate relief to families with younger children, so we're thankful lawmakers are coming back to get it right. Programs like the child tax credit are exactly how we make New Jersey an affordable place to raise a family, especially for those struggling with the most high costs and rising costs. New Jersey, of policy perspective, and other progressive groups have also pushed for the inclusion of a state-level child tax credit. And some have even said that they will look to work with lawmakers to expand the credit in future years. Tom Wolf says a $25 million child tax care credit will benefit at least 200,000 families in Pennsylvania. The governor's office says the program will give back to $180 to $630 to Pennsylvania families.
Madam Speaker, let me wish you good morning, and my good friend, Mr. Cole, good morning. It feels like just a couple of hours ago I was saying good morning. But let me say to the gentleman, he looks marvelous for getting no sleep, and it's great to be with you. Madam Speaker, the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 972, providing for the consideration of the Senate amendment to H.R. 2471, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2022. It provides for a motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2471 with a House amendment and 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. It divides the question on adoption of the motion into 2 votes in the order specified by the chair, and provides that if any portion of the divided question fails, the House shall be considered to have made no disposition of the Senate amendment. The rule also provides for consideration of H.J. Res. 75, the extension of Continuing Appropriations Act of 2022 under a closed rule. It provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Finally, the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 6968, the Suspending Energy Imports from Russia Act, under a closed rule. It provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means, and provides 1 motion to recommit. Madam Speaker, the bills contained in this rule are about investing in our communities and families here at home and living up to our values abroad. Throughout last summer, House Democrats were hard at work passing appropriation bills, funding nearly all of the federal government to build on the momentum of our economic recovery. This full-year omnibus is the product of extensive bipartisan, bicameral negotiations. Both sides have come together to produce an agreement to fund the government that I think has resulted in a very, very good bill. This means this agreement does not include everything I wanted. And I know it doesn't include everything my Republican friends wanted. But I think at the end of the day, it's a good package that is going to benefit the American people. I especially want to recognize Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger and thank them for forging a bipartisan path forward. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the incredible staff of the Appropriations Committee, as well as the incredible staff of the Rules Committee, Democrats and Republicans, who have worked tirelessly to bring this legislation to the floor today. I think most of my colleagues here do not appreciate how hard the staff works, and I think the American people ought to
today, I should say, and Senator Cantwell. She's been a champion in this state to keep clear in the bipartisan infrastructure law and delivering high-speed internet all across the state of Washington, and because we're going to outcompete the rest of the world. She understands how we do. We got to have you have access to that information. Think about it. During the pandemic, how many of you parents had to drive your kids into a McDonald's?
So President Biden has announced his new plan to fight inflation and help low-income households across the country financially. The Biden administration says they are now ready to take action. So here's some breaking news. President Biden laid out a three-part plan for combating high inflation, which has been a major strain on his job approval rating. Before meeting with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, President Biden told reporters, "We now have a chance to build on historic recovery with an economy that works for working families. The most important thing we could do right now to transition from rapid recovery to stable, steady growth is to bring inflation down. That is why I've made tackling inflation my top economic priority." The first part of President Biden's plan was the acknowledgement that the Federal Reserve has a primary responsibility to control inflation. Biden also said his predecessor demeaned the Fed and argued that he won't do the same. The second part of his new plan involved making goods more affordable for families with a focus on high gas prices. His administration has blamed the crisis for the high gas price. Biden also touted the release of global oil reserves and called on Congress to pass clean energy tax credits. Biden's plan to make goods more affordable also includes fixing supply chains, improving infrastructure, and cracking down on the fees that foreign ocean freight companies charge to move products. He also touted policies to make housing more affordable and called on Congress to work on reducing the price of prescriptions and lowering the cost of childcare and healthcare. Biden's meeting with Jerome Powell indicates he has directed his attention to high inflation, including the high cost of goods and gas, which has affected the president's approval rating and is a challenge for Democrats. The meeting is his first between Biden and Powell since November. The third part of the president's plan involved reducing the federal deficit through reforms to the tax code. Biden also noted that the Congressional Budget Office projected that the deficit will fall by $1.7 trillion this year, which would be the largest reduction in history. Biden said with the policies right, the U.S. can transition from recovery to stable, steady growth, and bring down inflation without giving up all these historic gains. Lawmakers have made it clear that it may be a while for prices to go down. Biden said that a growth will look forward and look different during the transition to bring down inflation, knowing that there will be lower job creation numbers. Additionally, the president touted elements of the economy that have recovered since the crisis, including a decline in unemployment and American families increasing their savings and decreasing their debt. Some Indiana residents are already seeing extra money in their bank account. Payments from Indiana's automatic taxpayer refund are starting to arrive. Individual taxpayers will get $125, while married couples who file jointly will get $250. The state revealed back in December that Indiana taxpayers will get a refund after filing their 2021 taxes. The Department of Revenue and Auditor of State's office are working together to distribute the money. An estimated 4.3 million Indiana residents are eligible. The governor said the money is effectively a 12% cut in the average resident's annual income tax liability. Approximately $545 million will be returned to taxpayers after the state ended its fiscal year, with a surplus to cause the refund. Most payments are expected to come via direct deposit using information from tax returns, and some taxpayers will get a check mailed to them instead. The refund is separate from any money Indiana residents may have received after filing their individual state income tax return.
And for many of us, this is the definition of a frontline community. And over the past 3 decades, Chairwoman, low-income Americans have become increasingly concentrated in poorer neighborhoods like 4217. We know that individuals with disabilities experience greater levels of poverty, as we heard today, and lower levels of wealth than those without disabilities, requiring an average of an additional $17,000 per year to obtain the same standard of living for many of us. Meanwhile, individuals with disabilities are underemployed and underpaid, as again, many have testified. That means that the devastating impacts of our housing affordability crisis are falling even heavier on those living with disabilities. For me, environmental justice is disability justice, and economic justice is disability justice. So, Carrington, when it comes to purchasing a home, many individuals with disabilities are underbanked or credit invisible.
When will the stimulus checks be sent out? And is there going to be a 5th stimulus check? So in this video, I'll be answering all of your questions surrounding the 4th and even 5th stimulus relief package. But first, I want you guys to know that the federal government just announced that more than 2.3 million new stimulus checks have been sent out. And that represents over $4.2 billion in stimulus payments to Americans. In total, more than 169 million payments worth about $395 billion have been issued since Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act in March. And everybody, I really hope that our politicians realize that American people are still in need of stimulus money. There are so many people across the country that are suffering, and a 4th stimulus check of $1,000 a month will definitely help those people out. And if you guys agree with me, then don't forget to give this video a like. Everybody, let's get this video to 1,000 likes to show our politicians that the American people still need a 4th stimulus payment.
This isn't about Dr. Fauci. It's not about his feelings, and I'm sorry if his feelings were hurt. Maybe he ought to buy an emotional support pony. But we're not debating dance moves on TikTok here. We're talking about millions of human lives, and here's what we know.
As you've alluded to, the big meeting after the G7, which will focus on all of these issues.
The privatization of Social Security benefits. That is what it does. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people coming up here and saying, well, we want to preserve Social Security. What they really mean is in order to preserve Social Security, they want to cut Social Security benefits. Maybe not for the people today.
In the 4th round of stimulus checks, 1.1 million stimulus payments with a value of more than $2.5 billion were plus-up payments. And that includes new or larger payments that were due to individuals and families after the 2020 tax returns have been processed. To date, more than 8 million of these payments have been sent. Additionally, more than 900,000 checks worth around $1.9 billion went to individuals who recently filed their tax returns with the IRS, but did not previously have the information on record. The latest rounds of payments includes more than $1.2 million direct deposits. Includes more than 1.2 million direct deposit payments, and while the rest were sent via paper checks. Everybody, that is awesome news for those of you who still have not received your 3rd stimulus money. It is very likely that your $1,400 check will arrive this week. If you haven't received it already, we'll also show whether your income dropped, because if you folks did not end up receiving your $1,400 stimulus check, or the previous 2 $1,200 or $600 checks, you can still claim the money by filing a federal tax return. I want you folks to know that the IRS continues to issue checks each week, including plus-up payments to those whose previous stimulus checks fell short, and new payments to people that it did not previously have a record on. Now, a section for the recovery rebate credit has also been added to this year's return to help people claim any missing money from the first $1,200 or second